Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wing Gambit Filthy Openings theory video. Now before you watch this, I would recommend you watch the other videos featuring the Wing Gambit just to get an idea of what to do in this opening. The truth be told, there isn't actually a lot of theory around the Wing Gambit. This is more of an intuition opening. But what I recommend is you play it in your games, you get a feel for it, and you understand the ideas behind it. Some of the lines can be very complex, but also very enjoyable, especially when you get a win in this opening. I find that a lot of games are very tactical and very sacrificial, so I always keep an eye out sacrificing a piece for some of black's pawns on the king side. But anyway, as I said before, so white begins with e4, black plays the French defence, but now we play knight to f3 and black plays d5, and the move we play is e5 from white, and c5 is played the majority of the time by black. So here we play b4. This is the Wing Gambit, and we're really hoping for black to take this pawn off on b4. I'll go through some alternatives in the end of the video. For instance, here black could play the move b6, or he could play the move c4. These are quite tricky. Also d4 in this position is also a bit tricky as well. But after b4 we're really hoping for black to take. So if black takes, c takes b4. I recommend highly that we play the move d4 right now. So straight away we're supporting the pawn on e5 with the d4 pawn and waiting for black's next move. For instance, a3 is touted in a lot of books as the move to play, but I really hate facing the move d4 from black. This is really awkward, and black's got a nice space advantage and equalises very easily in this type of position. So definitely, after c takes b4, always play d4. And this opening is really nice because black usually plays the same moves a lot. For instance, in this position, knight c6 is played the majority of the time. Other moves like knight e7 can be tried, but a lot of them transpose into the same positions you'll see. But for the argument's sake, let's just say black plays knight to e7. I'll just continue with the move a3. And if, say, knight to f5, we continue with a takes b4, bishop takes b4, c3, bishop a5, and then as white we just play bishop to d3, and we have a very nice game. Maybe after knight to e7 and a3, the only real move that we've got to be careful of is queen to a5. And I'll be honest, I've had many games where I've suffered against this move. But to be honest, I shouldn't have, because white gains an advantage quite quickly with bishop to d3. And if black now moves this pawn, let's say b3, bishop d2 is the correct move, and after b takes c2, just queen takes c2, and white's got a very nice game and has a lot of play. I should also just clarify, after this bishop d3 move, b takes a3 also succumbs to bishop d2, and again white's got a very nice game. However, let's take us back to the move d4. White's just played d4. So again, knight to e7 can be played. Other moves like bishop d7 also transpose, but usually black plays knight to c6. I'd say 9 out of 10 times he play this move. And white should now continue the move a3, and we're hitting the pawn on b4. So the point of a3 is black doesn't really want white's take on b4, because then white will gain a c3 move with tempo once black recaptures it. So typically here, black should probably take the pawn on a3, and white should continue the move c3. White could also capture this pawn on a3 at any point they want, because they've got 3 pieces attacking it. Again, another move that black can play that's quite risky is queen to a5 in this position, but as I said earlier, white can play bishop to d3. And if black continues with check, bishop d2 is the real move we should play, attacking the queen. And once the queen retreats, play knight takes a3. I should also note that c3 is actually a terrible move. I've played this move multiple times and I've had terrible games. This is because now black can play the move a2 and just hit the knight. And once the knight moves, maybe queen takes c3 can be played, and white's in a bit of a terrible position. So going back to this position, b takes a3 is played a lot by black. Again, we should continue with the move c3. So the point is that we always try and get this pawn chain and stick our bishop on d3. For instance, bishop d7 and now bishop d3, and we're into our optimum position. And here black has an array of moves he can play. Queen to b6 can be played, knight to e7 or bishop to e7 are usually played as well, maybe even knight to h6. But the point is, as white, what we're going to do is just pick up this pawn with the knight and the bishop. We can castle kingside or play the move h4 and prepare knight to g5 followed by queen to h5 or queen to f3 at some point. But the only terrifying move I've ever faced in this position is actually the move b5. And this is because if bishop takes b5, then black can play knight takes e5, which is quite terrifying because the bishop on d7 hits the bishop on b5, and if bishop takes d7, black can play knight takes d7, and black has a nice advantage. So after b5, the recommended move is to take on a3 with the knight, and after the move b4, just capture. The bishop will recapture and white should play bishop to d2. And once everything gets taken off, knight g7, castles, castles, knight b5. Now this position is given as dead even, but I still rate white's chances. They've got very nice bishop on d3, raking over the board, and this h7 pawn could become a target at a later date. Now I'd recommend for white here would just be to put the rook on b1 and try and win back this a7 pawn at some point, or maybe even stick a knight into d6. So definitely white does have some play in this position. So b takes a3 is nothing to fear. We're just going to develop normally with bishop to d3 and then move c3 and continue our attack. f6 is another try in this position, but I recommend again just take the pawn, bishop takes c3, the bishop may retreat to a5 somewhere, just continue with bishop to d3. And I've had this position many times. Again, there's no problems for white. A lot of the time black may take his pawn on e5, but we just recapture with the pawn, and if queen c7, just play moves like queen to e2 and keep this pawn on the board. And again, the point of white's attack is to hit this h7 pawn and maybe even play a knight to g5. Possibly bishop to a3 as well would be quite nice, and maybe white should castle in this position because this c3 pawn is coming under some threat. That would be my recommendation. But again, even after f6 and takes c3, bishop a5, bishop to d3, other moves have been played by f5. But again, white's got nothing to fear here. I actually think the move g4 may be even possible in this position, because if takes, knight g5 looks very tempting indeed. So we're hitting this pawn twice, and also the queen now hits this g4 pawn. And if a move like, let's say, h6, there's bishop g6 check. And this is the type of position you could get into as white. So there's a lot of nice, tempting and very tasty positions for white to chew on. So I'll get back to this position again. White's just played the move a3, and now actually one of the most common moves is for black to play bishop to d7. So we'll take this pawn on b4, the bishop will recapture, and we'll play c3. Hitting the bishop. So the bishop has a couple of options here. Bishop a5 is seen quite often. Again, we'll just develop normally with bishop to d3, and white's got no issues. For instance, after knight g7, white can actually castle here, and if black castles, well, we get into a terrible position for black because bishop takes h7, Greek gift sacrifice, as you've seen in a previous video. Again, if king takes, we'll play knight to g5. And get in a tremendous position for white. For instance, if king g8, there's queen h5, threatening mate on h7, and also threatening f7 if the rook moves, like so. So in this position, your opponents might play the move h6 to stop this, but I do like white's position, and it's probably up to you to think of your own plan here. But usually maybe bishop c2 and queen to d3 are an idea to hit h7. Or you could play bishop to d2 to protect this c3 pawn and play knight to a3 ideas, followed by knight b5 and knight to d6. Remember, this square on d6 is also very nice if you can get a knight into it. But again, this is a very rich position. Just play a few games and you'll get to grips with it very nicely. So in this position, bishop a5, we play bishop to d3, knight g7 castles. Black may also play moves like knight to f5. But then there's a very nice move, bishop to a3, just stopping black from castling. And this is another typical idea of this opening, just dominating these dark squares. So just keep an eye out for these key ideas. But back to the main position, c3. Usually bishop e7 is another main move that black can play. And we just keep it simple, just play bishop to d3 once again. And again, black has an array of options here. I've seen knight to a5 many times. White can just simply castle though. After a6, maybe white can play knight to a3 or just play bishop to d2 ideas and just reroute this knight maybe back to c2 or onto b4. The point is though, in these type of positions it's very tricky for black to get this knight on g8 out. They've got to remove this bishop off e7 or play f6 or even play knight to h6. But it's very hard for black to develop their king side. So usually a lot of times they play moves like rook to c8 and maybe white has to follow up with bishop d2 and just hold on to the c3 pawn for the time being anyway. And in positions like this I usually like to put my queen onto e2 and then just play rook to b1 and try and focus fire on this side of the board with these two rooks. But that's just one idea. f5 has also been seen multiple times. And if this happens, maybe you can play h4. After knight to h6, take on h6, g takes and queen c1. White's got a fine position and black's doubled h pawns are not going to help. And white should easily win a pawn back. So after bishop to d3, I think a6 is the best move actually that black can play. But now I would recommend playing the move h4 followed by a knight g5 if possible. Again, if knight h6 in this position, we can just take and play queen to d2. White's got a very nice game. And if black plays the move h6, maybe it's best for white to be patient and play moves like knight bd2. And after rook c8, maybe queen to b3. And after maybe move like knight to a5 to hit the queen and protect the pawn. Calmly play queen to c2, and usually black can play b5. Now I've had similar positions like this against black, but it always seems to be that this pawn on a6 becomes rather weak. For instance, in this position knight to b3 is quite nice, and if knight takes b3, queen takes a5, you could take the pawn on b5 if you wish, but also bishop d2 is rather nice as well. So even though white's a pawn down, this is a very equal position with lots of chances for both sides. But the cusp of the matter is, this is the main position that you'll probably get into the majority of the time. And that's pretty much the theory of the Wing Gambit in the main line anyway. I wish I could show you more, but ultimately I can only show you the door, you have to walk through it. But let me assure you that these positions are very nice to play, especially in Blitz online as well. So after b4, let's have a look at some other ideas that black can play. They don't have to take this b4 pawn. If knight to c6, this is just great for white. Honestly, you'd love to see this move on the board because then b takes c5. After bishop takes c5, play d4. After bishop b6, c3, knight ge7, we play bishop to d3. And we've got our setup that we absolutely love. And again, if black castles here, there's the Greek gift, bishop takes h7. But anyway, this is a really nice position for white to be in. Perhaps bishop d7 would continue. Again, we can start harassing the king side with knight to g5. And frankly, this is a great position for white to be in. So knight c6 is a terrible move for black and just gives white the advantage. Other moves seen are d4 from black. Now black's trying to gain some space in the centre and isolate this e5 pawn. So what should we do? Well, first off, let's take the c5 pawn off. And after bishop takes, I recommend to play bishop to d3. So what this does is block this d4 pawn and blocks this bishop from gaining a diagonal. One of the plans behind this move as well is that maybe white can play the move bishop to e4 at some point and put some pressure on this diagonal. Play could continue knight to c6, and after castles, knight to ge7, we play the move queen to e2, supporting this e5 pawn, After h6, stopping any Greek gift sacrifices, we can continue with bishop to a3, and if queen to a5, takes, takes, and plays c3. And after takes and knight takes, white's got no problems in this position. Knight to e4 could come, or maybe even rook to c1. And I think you'll agree there's a lot of play for white in this position. So what else can black play here? Well, c4 is another move, hitting this b4 pawn. So very logical from black. I recommend the move c3 though. So we're holding on to this b4 pawn. If black develops normally with bishop to d7, I recommend playing the move d3. So already undermining this c4 pawn. And if captures, play bishop takes, and again white's in a very solid position with a very nice bishop on d3. However, I don't expect black to play normally here. They should play the move a5, again hitting this b4 pawn, and this will force us to play the move b5. But this b5 pawn isn't too bad. It covers this a6 and c6 square and stops this knight developing properly. For instance, if knight to d7, play d3 again, undermining this c4 pawn. If captures, as captures, followed by, let's say, knight to e7, and we can castle. After knight g6, we play queen to e2, so white's holding on to this e5 pawn, and let's say black plays bishop to c5. The idea now white should use is to play the move c4, and just get rid of his backward pawns. For instance, if castles, this takes, takes, and knight to c3. So back to this position after the move a5 from black. Again, b5. There's other moves that black can play. I think a tempting one that black usually plays is the move a4. So trying to isolate this b5 pawn. If this happens, you should play d3. Hitting this c4 pawn again. So if captures, bishop takes, knight d7, and just castle again. And if queen c7, hitting this e5 pawn, play rook e1. Just develop normally for white now. Play can continue knight c5, and it's very important that you keep hold of this white square bishop. That's basically white's ace in this whole position. Bishop d7, knight to a3. So these are moves I've just ran in the computer, so these aren't necessarily theory, but it's just an idea of what you should do if you get into some of these awkward positions that black can tempt you into. So play continued knight to e7, and again the idea, just play c4, get rid of this backward c pawn. And after takes, takes, I feel like white's in a very fine position. And the last move we're going to look at is when black plays b6. This is a very hard move to deal with, but I recommend the move c3. And if black now takes on b4 and recaptures, they can't take again with bishop takes b4 because there's a nice queen a4 check winning the bishop. So black usually responds, let's say bishop to d7. I recommend playing a3, and a lot of the times this becomes a very blocked position. For instance, black can play a5, and if this happens, I'm going to recommend the move b5. And it's similar to what we had in a previous position with the move c4. For instance, black can play a4 here, and we can play c4. And again, if d4, we can play bishop to d3 and try and get on this white squared diagonal. The main move in this position actually, once you played c3, is actually queen to d7. Maybe stopping bishop b5 check ideas. But then we can simply take on c5, and after taking, play the move d4. And we're into a similar main line where both sides haven't actually got a b pawn. Now this position is given as dead equal, and I've got to be totally honest, I don't really think it offers white much of an advantage. So this is probably why the Wing Gambit isn't played at such a high level, because obviously there'll be some lines that aren't as good. But even so, let's say bishop to a6 from black. We can take, and just castle, and again white's got a very solid position, so if you're a decent player, it's going to be very hard to break down white's position. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the analysis of this video. If you're really serious about playing this in a proper tournament, I recommend you do your own theory and research as well on top of watching these videos. and just play a few games online and try and get into the ideas and attacking potential behind this position. But I do highly recommend it, and I've actually beaten so many top players online with using this system. But anyway, I hope you have fun, and let me know how you get on with your own games. And if you do have a top game, just let me know, email me or drop it down in the comments, and I'd love to play through it. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.